Few hobbies in our time have been the target of so much pointless hate, ignorance, and twisted media as tabletop gaming. While these days video games have been the flavor of the month, the late 70s through the 80s saw role-playing games as a target of so many ignorant church groups in some sad attempt to save people's souls from the sin of having fun. The thing is, the hobby never fully recovered. Unlike video games that have an active community and a strong business foundation, the companies in those days were much more fragile and had to do their best to accommodate these false accusations rather than combat them head-on. As a result, the hobby suffered, and the only things made public is whatever the media and pop culture twisted to its purposes. The result is that what was once a fun and legitimate hobby got turned into the punchline of nerd jokes everywhere, and even I'm not innocent of that. Well, I'm here to change that. I was told by a civilized man once that education is the path to redemption. Unfortunately, this is just before my warband killed him and burned his village to the ground. In hindsight, I don't think he said that so much as let out a gurgled cry for help. Oh well. For today's episode, we'll talk about the top 9 myths of role-playing games. Why 9? 'Cause I'm lazy. Number 9. Role-playing games promote Satanism. This is on the bottom of the list for 2 reasons. 1, it's an old myth that's been debunked 100 times before, and 2, it's not so debunked that it's worth putting away just yet. This myth stems from early images depicted in early D&D books of demons, devils, and satanic symbols. This generated complaints among a number of church and parenting groups who believed that the game promoted Satanism. This is a case of judging a book by its cover. Do you want to know what those images conveyed? Opponents to crush, enemies to be defeated, villains to oppose and destroy. The text is rather explicit about this, and groups calling these images a promotion of Satanism and evil are like me looking at this image and going, "Oh wow, Christians must really hate this guy. They show him being brutally tortured and executed all the time." It's a knee-jerk reaction taken out of context, and it makes me wonder if truly hellish demons run into these kinds of problems in their games.
Gulkarash, me and your mother have grown concerned. We've been seeing some of the reading material that you and your friends use to play games.
What your father is trying to say is that we saw some of the pictures in your books, and that made us a little worried. What? Dad? No,
Are you good aligned? Are you worshipping those deities of love and hope? I won't be having any wholesomeness or morality in this house, young man.
It's just a game, Dad.
You think acting decent and happy is just a game? You think being a nice guy is just a game? You go to your room and you sacrifice a virgin and you think about what you did. And while you're at it, burn this book.
Number 8. Role-playing games encourage the committing of crimes. The logic behind this is the same as it applies to video games. Essentially, by acting out these actions in a fictional world, you are in turn training yourself to perform these actions with absolutely no hesitation or inhibition whatsoever. It's a logic rarely applied directly to tabletop RPGs, but it exists. What this logic fails to consider is that in all role-playing games there is a distinct separation between character and player. It's a concept I'll get into later, but for now, understand that it's important. I already spoke with you about the case of Rod Farrell, who took about 10 hits of acid, then beat a man to death in his sleep just before murdering his wife. The History Channel seems to lay the blame squarely on the shoulders of a rather innocent game, rather than, I don't know, the parents, the drug abuse, or 1,000 other logical answers that make more sense than "a game made me do it." Sadly, his case was far from an isolated one. There was a bizarre event involving Steve Jackson Games where Secret Service honestly believed that their game Cyberpunk contained code which magically turned innocent kids into hackers that were out to fight the man. Oh, and let's not forget that delightful family TV movie based on true events, Honor Thy Mother. Well, I'm sorry to inform the FBI, CIA, NSA, ABC, and CNN, but the most you're ever going to learn from reading an RPG book is a bit of history, some basic math, and some very basic improvisational skills. Well, okay, I did learn how to stab a guy in the eye with a pair of chopsticks, but that doesn't count. Number 7. Role-playing games encourage antisocial behavior. Oh, Right, just because I lock myself in a room with a few of my friends for a few hours once a week, I'm antisocial. However, when I spend a few hours every weekend locked in a similar room with Mrs. Basement Orc, that's perfectly acceptable behavior. Role-playing games are the antithesis of antisocial. In fact, I'd argue sitting with your friends and watching football is more antisocial than playing D&D. In D&D, you're required to interact with the other players on some level. In watching football, you don't have to do any of that. Heck, you could watch football all by yourself. I think this myth stems from the fact that role-playing games do tend to attract relatively antisocial people, and it's easy to see why. The group is relatively small and takes part in an activity that doesn't require the player to express themselves in an overtly exposing manner. There's no pressure to be good at it, and you can choose to play only with those people close to you. So, with that in mind, wouldn't that make role-playing games the opposite of antisocial? Number 6. Role-playing games cause mental problems. This is another myth born from the dark days of bad. The claim was simple. The dark rituals and experiences of role-playing a different character would split a person's mind and give them multiple personality disorder, schizophrenia, or all manner of terrible mental maladies. So far, the only case I've noticed of anyone developing a crippling mental disorder was a young Tom Hanks stricken with a disease where he thought he knew how role-playing gamers acted. So, after literally dozens of psychological studies debunking that particular problem, I think it bears saying this. People with certain kinds of mental health issues are attracted to role-playing games. Now, I know all of you at about this time are asking 2 questions. First, why? And second, is this a bad thing? The answers? Well, people with certain disorders, particularly Asperger's syndrome, find role-playing games an activity where they can express their creativity and intellect without being held down by their physical or mental limitations. It's an escapist fantasy where they could be the noble knights or powerful wizards or spacefaring explorers. In other words, it's fun, and they can do it. And it's not a bad thing. One of the best game masters I ever met suffered from Asperger's. Others I've met tended to be fun and nice people, long as you just stayed patient and looked past the illness to the people sitting in the chair. So, I can see where someone casually looking at such a game where someone with a real-life illness is playing a game and might come to such a conclusion. All I can say is that it's just not true. The only time you're ever going to suddenly develop a mental illness is in-game, and that's your character, not you.